The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect those of the ANA or its members. On today's episode of On Scope, Morning Consult CEO Michael Ramlet gives us the current state and future of market research. And on marketing news you might have missed, a holiday spending increase? In this economy? All that next on Scope. Good golly, Miss Molly, this is On Scope, the marketing podcast brought to you by the ANA and powered by Odyssey, a leading audio streaming platform. You can get your favorite podcasts, music, and entertainment all on the Odyssey app. I am your host, Mike Berberich, and with me, as always, Ryan Dinger, producer of On Scope. Ryan, how does the day find you?
I'm doing quite well today, Mike. It's another beautiful week. It's Masters Week.
It is.
If you're a member of the ANA or a non-member, you can go too. So
Absolutely.
If you're down there in Florida listening, that's pretty exciting.
Yep. Not jealous, in case you were wondering. So, Ryan, we've got a really cool episode and interview lined up about a topic that might seem a little bit, stale, dry, whatever. It is anything but. But because I'm on my game, I know we've got business to tend to before we get to that. Ryan, is there any chance you might have some marketing news we might have missed?
I know that you've read your episode rundown, Mike, because that is the first segment we are doing today. It is marketing news you might have missed. And today's story comes from ANA Magazine. I think you're going to find this one pretty interesting, Mike.
I have no doubt.
Here we go. Here's the headline. Adobe. U.S. online spending is expected to reach $253.4 billion during the holiday season. U.S. online sales are expected to hit $253.4 billion this holiday season, representing a 5.3% increase year over year, according to Adobe's online shopping forecast for the 2025 holiday season, released earlier this month. Based on Adobe Analytics data, the report provides a comprehensive view into U.S. e-commerce by analyzing direct transactions online, covering more than 1 trillion visits to U.S. retail sites, 100 million SKUs, and 18 product categories. The report covers the period from November 1st, 2025 to December 31st, 2025. Cyber Week, the 5-day period including Thanksgiving, Black Friday, and Cyber Monday, is expected to drive roughly 17% of overall spending this season, totaling $43.7 billion, up about 6% year over year. So, holiday spending expected to be up. I find that a little surprising, Mike. I'm wondering, I feel like middle class, lower class individuals, it's rough out there right now. There are a lot of factors. We don't need to get into it. I think if you're alive in the U.S., you sort of understand what's going on with the economy right now. So I'm wondering, is this the richest 1 or 2% of individuals driving the spending? Are they going to have a big uptick? And that's kind of what is pushing this over the edge. You look a little skeptical.
It's an interesting thought, and would make the most rational sense. My only thing is that we are not rational animals, Ryan.
Well, maybe you aren't.
Well, okay.
I'm the level-headed producer.
Well, we'll get into it after the cameras stop rolling. But no, historically we've seen that spending, especially in the upper crust of our economy, doesn't really correlate to capital injection. Jobs go up when there's a demand, not when, somebody gets an extra $200 million. It just doesn't work that way. Extra money does not mean extra spending, historically speaking, in that upper 1 or 2%. But there is something else in history that I think may be at play right now.
Interesting.
Yes. So in 2008, Leonard Lauder, one of the co-founders of Estee Lauder, saw that despite the recession, despite the kind of meltdown financially that we experienced in the second half of that year, that his lipstick sales went up. And, you extrapolate that across other things that I would call little luxuries. And there is actually historical data that suggests that in tough, uncertain, rough times, humans who should rationally be cutting down their spending actually find those little bits of resources they have to help themselves existentially, emotionally. Like retail therapy is a very real thing, and unfortunately it doesn't correlate to good or bad economic times. So I have a suspicion that something like that might be going on here. I don't want to get much bleaker, but, I know for myself, buying a house when I was 15, that was like, yeah, by the time I'm like 25, 30, I'll get a job, then you get a house. That is not really the economic reality anymore.
Yeah.
So there might be just less saving for big ticket items and more spending on things that make you happy in the moment. That is my 2 cents. What are you thinking about?
Well, there's a layer here that you got me thinking about. The story goes on to note that Adobe expects significant discounts this holiday season, up to 28% off listed price, on par with the 2024 season. Discounts for both electronics and toys are expected to be nearly 30% off. The deeper discounts are expected to land throughout Cyber Week, with Cyber Monday being the, quote, last call for the best deals, according to Adobe. So even for a financially, a fiscally responsible, I don't want to say fiscally responsible, even for a financially minded consumer who wants to worry, make sure that they're spending responsibly, this could be an opportunity to kind of cash in when there's a discount out there. If you know you want to buy a certain product and it's going to be on sale, that's the time to buy it, right?
Absolutely.
So might be something to that. But the real question is, this is all interesting data. I find it a bit surprising. You not so much. Our listeners probably split that way too. But I guess the real question is what does this mean for marketers?
That is, and I'm glad you asked that question. It's what we always got to come back to here on Scope, the marketing podcast. So here's my mind of it. Because what I just said is some speculation, is just some thoughts bouncing around in my head. Please do not take that as gospel, listeners. But so if you're more of the mind that maybe the upper crust of our economy is spending more because they've, got a little bit of a cash influx, then you should be looking at your premium products and services and seeing how you can really pump up the volume on getting those out there. If you subscribe a little bit to the lipstick theory and are thinking that it's just kind of that working class middle chunk of America that is doing this increased spending, then that discount area, the numbers said that Cyber Week is actually a full percentage up above the general holiday season.
Right.
This is a huge, massive opportunity. It always is, but I think you might actually want to pay even more attention than you already are on those 5 key days coming up for this final fiscal quarter.
Yeah, I think it might be time to goose the marketing budget. Q4 historically has always been the time when businesses make the most money.
Yep.
If you're a little behind on your projections for the year right now, Adobe's saying the spending's going to be going up over the next few months. And so I think it's a good time for you to get your brand out there and try to capitalize on this. So interesting story, some interesting data there, if it is to be believed. And I don't see why Adobe would lie to us about their research.
No.
Pretty rude.
They're pretty solid shop over
before we move on, I want to play a little game here. So they list in the story the 3 categories that are expected to be fueling the online spending this season. It says more than half of online spending this season will be fueled by 3 categories. Wow. Care to take a guess at what those are, Mike?
Okay. So I'm gonna double down on my boy Leonard Lauder. I'm gonna say beauty products, that kind of general area.
That's a gray one. I don't know whether I can count that as right or as correct or not right now. Let's go back. Let's hear your other 2.
Okay, all right. So I think consumer electronics.
Ding!
For sure. Yeah? All right.
Electronics expected to generate $57.5 billion, up 4% year over year.
And we said this is digital spending, right?
No.
Oh, okay. Just overall
No, this is
spending
just
increase.
online. Well, it's online spending, yes, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the products themselves. You can buy anything online.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. My goodness.
I
I'm
would
gonna
be
go
very
for
surprised if you get this one.
I'm going wild card. I'm going against grain because who the heck knows? Automotive. No, I didn't
No,
think
it
so.
is incorrect. But you would think that might be one because the way that the
Carvana and
car,
all this stuff,
and the way that car ads ramp up around the holiday
Oh, my
season. I always
goodness,
wondered
yes.
as the son of middle class parents, who's buying cars for the holiday. But apparently people do because
Yeah.
the luxury brands are out there like this is the time. You got the big bow, but no, automotive was not one of the categories. The last category was actually furniture. Interestingly enough. Expected to generate $31.1 billion, up roughly 6% year over year. I said there was one guess that you had that I wasn't really clear whether I guess.
Can I update it?
Sure.
It?
Yeah,
Because you want to you want me to get a little more specific?
Well, the category I would say the category is actually broader than what you suggested.
Okay. Because I was gonna go and maybe this is skincare.
No, so the final one was actually apparel.
Okay.
So, and I was wondering if beauty could fall into apparel, but I'm kind of thinking no. I think it would be
I want to play it. On the level. I don't want to diminish our integrity on this fine show.
So 1 out of 3. Hey, if this were a baseball game, you'd have a pretty good average.
Yeah, there you go.
You know what this is though, Mike? This is all great data. It's market research.
Yes, it is.
And that's what we're talking about on today's episode, isn't it?
Yes, we are, and we, as always, have the guest to talk about it with. Michael Ramlet is the co-founder and CEO of Morning Consult, a company with a mission to improve how global business, financial, and government leaders make decisions. He has been recognized as an EY Entrepreneur of the Year, a Best CEO for Women by Comparably, an Ad Age's 40 Under 40, and by Political's Playbook's Power List, among many others.
Yeah, that's an impressive resume.
When I tell you we bring the guests who have the bona fides, we do good work here at On Scope, Brian, and I'm sure you already know that. Michael joins us today to talk about the state and future of market research and Morning Consult's vision of democratized data. My conversation with Michael is up next. Since we began this podcast, OnScope has been on a mission to really cover the entire breadth and depth of the marketing landscape, and in a lot of ways to show some love to some areas that kind of don't get what they deserve. And I think that this is a foundational part of marketing, doesn't get talked about a lot. What am I talking about, dear listeners? We're going into a deep dive on marketing research with the one and only CEO and co-founder of Morning Consult. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Michael Ramlet to the pod. Michael, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
So, like I said, we're going in marketing research. Obviously, it's 2025, so we're bringing in AI and talking about that too. But before we get into that, because it is something that my producer Ryan and I, when we saw this, we were like, AI with a clear use case? So we knew we needed to have you in, but I'm getting ahead of myself, as I am tend to. I want to talk about why market research is often thought of and referred to as an antiquated area. I mean, most areas of marketing are known for the breakneck speed of change, innovation, disruption. What makes marketing research different?
I mean, I think it's an indictment of the legacy companies that have been in this space. You haven't seen a pace of innovation the way you saw in ad tech or other parts of marketing. And I think what stood out to us was the opportunity to bring true technical talent to bear on the issue. We have an incredible team from a technical standpoint, but also this idea of, the world sped up and marketing research didn't.
Yeah.
And you think about the last 20, 25 years, the Cantars, the Ipsos of the world, they didn't change. And you look at other areas, the marketing substack, and those have changed tremendously. And so I think we saw a huge opportunity to bring better tech, but also the ability to collect data at a scale and a pace that it was unprecedented for the industry.
Yeah, well, I mean, marketing research, we love to talk about data and insights and all that, but there's like a foundation of knowledge below that, and it is what comes from like really due diligence and deep marketing research.
Yeah.
So I think this is a much needed change to the industry. So let's jump into how this particular AI system came to be. We all know that, garbage in, garbage out. So how did you train the AI?
Yeah.
And what training might be necessary for humans using this tech? I don't want to get ahead of myself twice in a row.
Sure.
But there is something I love about this tech, so go for it.
Take a step back and start with sort of how the data is collected, because that really sets up what the AI is able to do.
Please.
And so I think if you think about market research, it's gone through mode shifts in the past from in-person to telephone, online. And when it moved online, it allowed you to collect data at a scale and a frequency that was never previously possible.
Oh, yeah.
It also drove down the unit cost of an interview. And so I think for us, it was how do you collect the highest quality interview most efficiently? And what it allowed us to do is think differently. So on a daily basis, we're doing 30,000 interviews in 43 countries. We want a representative sample of each population by age, by income, by ethnicity, by education, by gender, region of the country. And what's powerful about that is if you go back in time, we've now done 80 million interviews. So you're starting with this incredibly large, unprecedented data set about what people think. It could be about themselves, so a lot of audience questions. It could be about what they think about a brand, what do they think about the economy where they live. And in all of those pieces, how do you access that data? It's an incredible data set. And I think what AI does is really democratize the ability to access it. Most folks, when they think about AI, they're thinking about their experience on ChatGPT.
Right.
Or they're seeing the summary from Gemini in a Google search.
Right.
And those are leveraging large language sets. So, a lot of text, audio, video inputs. This is really designed differently. It's leveraging what's called retrieval augmented generation. So for listeners and podcast viewers, this really is thinking about the world as if you want to have some confines or guardrails in place.
Yes.
So I'm asking a marketing question, what's the top 5 brands in retail banking? It's going to be able to take that natural language question and it's going to transform it into code. And that code is then going to run across the database and it's going to retrieve all of the underlying points. And what's really powerful about that is it's not going to hallucinate. If there's not data there to answer that question, it won't retrieve anything. And it will tell you there's not data there. Obviously, that means we should ask more questions, we should collect more data. But I think what's really powerful about morningconsult.ai is you can log in right now, you can ask questions if you're having a conversation with a colleague, and it will then be pulling that data real time, visualizing it and summarizing it. I think those are the things that all of a sudden unlock a lot of value that was otherwise trapped in binders or Excel files and Dropbox folders.
Yeah. So one of the many hats I wear here at the ANA is heading up the marketing futures program. So I'm kind of the resident shiny object guy. And so I've been neck deep in AI for years now. And what really impressed me was when AI was working with a defined data set. It could do some really cool things. I still think we're a few years off for just go off into the internet and bring me something wonderful. So I love that it's, no matter how massive, it's a defined data set. And that's very, very important. And like you said, it takes care of the hallucination problem. But the other thing I really liked about this was that it's not going to just answer any random question you put in. You have to kind of know its language a little bit. Can you go into that a little?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges, we've done 80 million interviews. We've asked a lot of questions, and the diversity within those questions is tremendous. But at the end of the day, there's still more questions that folks might have, or there might be a pressing event. And so the challenge is how do you make sure that you're educating the user on a regular basis about ways in which they might go beyond their existing use case. And so I think that the onus in the AI environment becomes on how do you train folks to write really strong prompts.
Yes.
And so a lot of the investment has been our prompt library. If you log into morningconsult.ai, it's the number one area that you see change the most. So we're constantly thinking about how do we get better at asking questions about audiences. You can cut by demographics, by geographies. One of the big breakthroughs, you can ask for a 50-state map. And you think about these things where all of a sudden just the different form factors that can take hold and the time you're saving. It's one thing to see an analysis in a table state by state. It's entirely different to see a heat map generated with the AI and to see it instantaneously. So I think that aspect of what's possible is speeding up the information flow to match the decision-making criteria that marketers have. And that's just different for research. I think that's, when I look at the industry's inability to innovate, it was really the understanding of how fast decisions are being made by marketers and meeting them where they are.
Yeah, I love it. And I think Morning Consult was kind of uniquely set up to do that. You were getting this pulse, you were doing this on the daily, so that pipeline was kind of ready to be plugged in.
Right, and you don't realize, I think this has been a challenge for anyone that's using these legacy market research vendors. I don't think they realize how much fraud or how much the small sample sizes are impacting the analysis. And so without either the daily data, I'm sure we'll talk about synthetic data, but one of the challenges, for instance, for synthetic data is, when is the data that's being analyzed, when was it collected? If it was collected in 2024, Joe Biden's still president to that data set, and there's not a trade war going on. Mm-hmm. So the underlying data asset is the most important. I mean, we've made these investments in having the highest quality data, and that allowed us to have the structure to allow AI to do some really incredible things at Morning Consult AI.
I love that. And one thing you just brought up that I need to reiterate to our listeners, when you see a data point, the first thing you should do is look for the sample size. I think that is just because we get so many data points and we get so many charts and there's this and there's that I think we get it, the headline, and start thinking and acting on that when you really should do that second level of due diligence.
And that's where it becomes powerful, because you could ask a question about, I'm looking for moms who live in a certain geography. All of a sudden, it can take an 80 million person data set of respondents, and it can really cut into those geographies, but you still have large enough sample sizes to act on that data. Mm-hmm. And I think that was the challenge. The number one issue is encouraging people to think beyond what they traditionally thought of market research, because either the scale of the data, the frequency of the data sets update, you can now think about or act on information that you otherwise wouldn't have been able to do 5-10 years ago.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so, talking about 5 to 10 years ago, I'd like to kind of forecast 5 to 10 years in the future for a moment. So as I understand it now, and please do correct me if I'm wrong, the tool relies fully on research that Marketing Consult has already conducted. Even in the real time, even if it's 30 seconds ago, it is all kind of...
Yes.
Do you envision, because one thing that's starting to kind of bubble up and get a little bit of spotlight is synthetic research.
Right.
Do you envision a possible future iteration where synthetic predictive research comes into the fold in this AI platform?
So I would probably separate those two terms.
Please.
I would start with predictive. Is the data predictive? For us, actually, it's incredible the degree to which we have to focus on the predictive nature of the data. We work with some of the largest hedge funds in the world. We work with the major central banks like the Fed, and they want to be able to understand how predictive is the data set. And so it's benchmarked. So for instance, every publicly traded company that we track, you can actually benchmark all of their SEC reportable financials on it. And you can see it's a top 3 indicator for 180 publicly traded companies. Damn. And you're thinking about, for instance, staying at a place, you might be considering your vacation for weeks before you actually transact on it. And so that sort of attitudinal measure is going to be more predictive and forward-looking than necessarily a transaction data set. So it's great because that means that we have this confidence of understanding, okay, this is highly predictive of business outcomes. It's not so much about, hey, it's great to have this research for the sake of research. It's really about, this research is fundamental to the outcome you're trying to achieve as a business leader, as a marketer. And that's different, obviously, than synthetic. Synthetic is going to have potentially predictive outcomes, but I'd separate the two. If I look at synthetic, I look at a situation in which people are solving for deficiencies in many cases, rather than leveraging it to do some incredible next level novel application. Most of the pieces today with synthetic are, hey, we've got a small sample size, so we're going to try and juice it and make it look like it's bigger. Or we're going to try and create this situation where we've talked to some historical respondents, and I'm going to act as if this is somehow reflective of a respondent today. I think those are sort of shortchanging marketers. I think where we look at synthetic and are particularly excited about is, how do I take those 80 million interviews that we've already collected around the world, the largest global data set for that, and how do I allow you to do custom research that can crosswalk to that? So now you're leveraging, every time you're doing a new project as a marketer and leveraging novel new research, it can be crosswalked into the larger syndicated data set. So I think that's one of the applications. Obviously, I think you're kind of alluding to before, is you can generate personas, and those personas now can be updated with the daily data set. So you can see, how does a persona change as world events change around them.
I love that. And that actually puts a much more practical, useful idea of where synthetic data research is. It's so young, and you hear it and it's like, oh, you're just going to make up a million people and I'm supposed
garbage in, garbage out. You really have to
care
about data quality. I think that's the challenge here, is for the longest time, there wasn't this investment in making sure you had extremely high quality data. For us, it's different. You think about most market research shops, they're doing it on behalf of client. It's not their neck that's out there in terms of the quality of the data. But because we collect that data, because it goes to places like the Federal Reserve and other large scale institutions that make major decisions, it's our name on the door. We had to care about quality differently. And I think the benefit is once we started to realize that there was major improvements in quality, it was really then a second order effect that it also made it more efficient. Because you saw this situation in market research where a lot of buying and reselling of respondents happens that marketers don't even know. Yeah. Like one of the things we oftentimes do is sort of market research 101 of here are all the things that you're probably worried about that you should have known. Let's expose them and let's talk about, hey, we addressed this challenge with that technology. And then stepping forward is like, okay, let's think about where you want to go. What are the problems you want to solve? And be able to then have currency with the CFO. I want a marketer to be able to walk into a conversation with a CFO and have the same standing as somebody that might have operational data. Yeah. And I think that's a total game changer in terms of elevating the role of marketers in the C-suite.
That is so cool. And yeah, I mean, an educated consumer is your best customer. So getting marketers smart on this just kind of shows your chops and like just that importance. Listeners, stick around because we've been talking about data quality, and one thing we need to touch on is the risk of bias in AI and how we keep that crap out of there. Stick around, you're not going to want to miss it. Ryan?
Yeah, Mike?
I've read our ad read ahead of time this week.
Nice. You're doing your prep work. I like that.
You know, every day a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we actually need to do a little extra prep work. We need some supplies if we're going to do this right. Okay? So I'm thinking like tent.
Okay.
Thinking sleeping bags.
Uh-huh.
Thinking one of those like cool fire starters that like gives a little.
What do you think the ad is?
We're not going camping?
No, Mike.
What?
It's a different.
It was talking all about camp.
It's a different kind
I remember
of camp.
camp.
It's a different kind of camp.
What kind of camp are you talking about?
Mike, CAMP is an acronym. It's short for Certified A&A Marketing Professional Program.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, you turkey.
Okay. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's actually, if anything could be better than camping in the great outdoors, it's becoming a better, more informed, certified marketer through the A&A.
You know, it's what separates the good marketers from the great ones, Mike. The Certified A&A Marketing Professional Program, aka CAMP, gives you the edge, the strategy, the analytics, and the know-how to turn data into growth. You can get certified and be a better marketer.
That is wonderful. And if you are an A&A member, that is all included in your beautiful, beautiful membership.
It sure is.
And truly, it couldn't be easier for you to go over and start your journey to certification today.
Mm-hmm.
Just head on over to ana.net/camp. That's ana.net/CAMP. And now, back to our show.
A little podcast team retreat out in the wilderness. That sounds kind of fun.
Are you saying I shouldn't cancel the RV reservation then? We are back. This is On Scope, the marketing podcast. My guest today, Michael Ramlet, CEO and co-founder of Morning Consult. Now, Michael, as I was saying before the break, one concern with AI across the board is letting bias creep into the system. So how do you deal with the concern of biases baked into AI systems when it comes to Morning Consult AI?
So I think there's two pieces to this, looking at large language sets versus large numerical data sets. When most folks are interacting with AI today, they're interacting with large language sets. So it might be a chat function like ChatGPT, leveraging a question and generating text and analysis based on what's out there on the internet. This is very different. Because we have this retrieval augmented generation architecture, the LLM isn't influencing the analysis. What it's doing is taking the actual question that's being asked, so this kind of natural language question of, what are the top 5 brands in commercial or retail banking? It will actually then transform that question into a code that is running across the data set. So at no point is it influencing or offering its opinion or trying to take that language and draw upon the strength and underlying elements of the text. It's just simply retrieving the data. Now, where this becomes really important then is, to avoid the biases, you have to have representative samples. And so we talked about the sample size is one thing, but making sure it's a representative sample. So for us, operating in 43 countries, we really have to understand what is that representative sample based on age, income, ethnicity, all the elements that would give you a truly reflective population and understanding what that population thinks. And so I think the way that we've really been focused on this is both the importance of representation in the underlying data set and the ability to keep those guardrails in place so you don't see a hallucination or you don't see the biases of a large language set creep into what is actually just an analysis of numerical.
That is great. And that's another thing that like kind of Ryan and I saw at the very beginning of this is it's not trying to do everything. Like honestly, specialization's not a bad area for AI to play in.
Right.
So I really do love that instead of trying to be like, oh, it could do anything, we'll make it do that. Like it's not doing things on purpose for these kind of guardrails, for this kind of assurance. I absolutely love it. Now, in the lead up to this podcast, we've been going back and forth, and something that has come up a lot is the theme of democratizing data. Now, how do you feel that a tool like this can do that, and why is it important to do so?
I think if you looked at market research or data more broadly, for the longest time, it was really limited to, I'm an executive, I'm going to ask an analytical user on my staff to dig into the data set and bring that data back. This democratizes access for executives to go and ask questions independently. Sometimes you might have a question you don't necessarily want to share with your staff in an email. This is an interface where you could be asking any question, you're getting that real-time data back. And I think it democratizes access because it's about the quality of the question you're asking. It's not about, do you know how to program in SQL? And so you might not be an expert in economics, but today you're really concerned about the health of your customer base. And so we saw this, for instance, with Home Depot and their earnings call. A lot of folks talk about like the Michigan Consumer Sentiment Index. It's great that it goes back to the 40s, but it's a tiny data set and it takes about 3 weeks to report the data. So you don't necessarily know much other than what 700 people 3 weeks ago thought about the economy.
Right.
Today, what you can do, and this is what happened in the earnings call, was you can talk about, in this case with Home Depot, not just what is the overall American feeling about the economy, but they're able to talk about how is the Home Depot customer feel about the economy.
That's great.
And so you can ask that question in morningconsult.ai by just asking, what's the consumer sentiment among, XYZ brands customers. And that's empowering because I don't think everyone remembers Economics 101. I think they want to be able to ask this question as if they're having a business conversation, and it democratizes who can get access to that data now.
I absolutely love it. And talk about going beyond like the CMO being able to talk to the CFO. This tool is letting you talk on the earnings call. Like that's another level.
And that's what you're seeing too from kind of Wall Street is they want to know more than just the SEC reportable financial data. So a lot of the investment banks use the morningconsult.ai in advance earnings calls. We're seeing this also with CMOs being pulled into earnings call prep. They want to be able to describe what's going on with our customers, what's the outlook. And in this kind of trade environment, a lot of the long-term guidance is being pulled. And so a Wall Street analyst from Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley, they're going to want to know what's going on in the last quarter and what's going on in the next quarter. And I think getting the CMO engaged and really being able to articulate that, but with a currency that holds that conversation with the CFO, with the CEO, and with Wall Street. And I think that's what's so empowering about Morning Consult.ai is you're able to combine all these assets in one place. You can look at geopolitics around the world as events happen. You can look at economics. But at the end of the day, it is the largest brand and audience data set.
And honestly, kind of ironically, for all the marketers who are like, can I just get back to insights and creativity? If you're going through hell, you keep going. The only way out is through, and like get this tool, get these chops under your belt, and your next idea is going to have a lot more heft.
When it doesn't discount the value of the idea. It's actually the opposite. This is what I think is misunderstood about this, is that it makes the value of an idea or a prompt or a question even more valuable.
Yes.
Because the back office pieces are being automated. Generating that chart takes milliseconds.
Yes.
But the ability for you to ask those questions and then converse with the data set, that's, when you think about it conversationally, you might have an original question. You might see data set and say, well, I actually want to see it among this population or in this geography. You're like, what about compared to that brand? And so all of a sudden it goes from just, I have a really great first question to I'm having a wonderful conversation that's advancing my thinking and what might drive a great marketing campaign.
Well, you set this next theme up very perfectly, so much appreciated. But so, AI has shown impressive capabilities when it comes to organizing, standardizing, and communicating data. But what we're kind of just beginning to talk into, and I'd love to kind of dive into, when it comes to real insights, there is still a human element needed. Can you go more into where that human element will start to really differentiate itself as this becomes more and more democratized?
Right. So that idea, that initial spark is even more valuable if everything else can be automated. And so I think that's the empowering piece for marketers in particular is that campaign that changes the entire outlook of a business is entirely possible, but now you can start to get a better sense of, how could I tweak it one way or how could I extend it another way? And so I think when we look at the underlying opportunity with AI, the chat conversational interface is just one part of it.
Yes.
So one of the areas that we're really focused on now is how do you take that underlying AI engine to build function-specific agents? And so you have an opportunity here, for instance, in the case of marketers, where I can generate an analysis that is really designed to you. Kind of the debate here in AI oftentimes is, the ability to repeat the same analysis is very difficult. So is that a feature or is that a bug?
Right.
And I think in this case, we always see it as a feature is you want to have that next report really stand out and be nuanced for the moment that you're consuming it. And so one of the agents that we're working on to support marketers is, brand health tracking still looks and feels like it's the mid-1990s with the old school operators. That should be so much faster. You shouldn't be waiting like 3 or 4 weeks after they collected the data 12 weeks ago to get feedback on if the campaign's working. And so I think what's really exciting about agents is you can have really function-specific agents, in this case marketing, and they're able to go in and understand, hey, based on television spend, based on connected TV spend, all of the elements on each channel, it should be generating an analysis of how much is that moving your intended marketing objective. And it's not waiting for that report. So it really is real time. It's giving you that ability to make changes. We saw this, for instance, we worked on a lot of Olympic creative. The ability to move very quickly.
Oh my God.
Obviously, there's a lot of different angles that you might be taking as the games go on. And all of those pieces have to operate at the speed you have to make the decision. And that has not been, to kind of connect it to the beginning, like market research has been too slow. They haven't been large enough data sets, both in terms of the sample size or the geographies. Like too often it's US centric and it's too expensive. All of these things should change. I think that's the exciting thing about operations like Morning Consult AI is all of a sudden you can get the data instantaneously. You can ask whatever question you want anywhere in the world. And it's right now as a free beta. So, the cost is right where every marketer can be. Anyone on the podcast could log into Morning Consult AI right now and access 80 million interviews.
Listeners, the research revolution has arrived. Michael, thank you so much for stopping by. This has been so illuminating and I hope empowering to all of our listeners. It has been a genuine pleasure having you as a guest on Scope.
Thank you.
And so we find ourselves here again at the end of another episode of On Scope, the marketing podcast. I want to give a huge thanks to Morning Consult CEO Michael Ramlet. I am always astonished that we can take topics that are a little bit more buttoned up, a little drier, like marketing research, and still have such a great and dynamic conversation. So big shout outs to Michael. Great first name, by the way. As a reminder, if you have a topic or guest that you'd like to see in a future episode of On Scope, go ahead, shoot us a note. We would love to hear from you. That email, onscope@ana.net. And now, as always, your moment of marketing meditation. Go ahead and take a deep breath. Relax those shoulders, and consider the following from mathematician and computer scientist Grace Hopper. 1 accurate measurement is worth 1,000 expert opinions. Think on that, and we'll see you next week.
This has been a presentation of ANA Studios.